I think that we need to raise our expectations, we need to raise our standards. We need to make sure that every child that finishes a DPS education, that graduates, is ready for the workforce.
Megan, in 30 seconds or a minute, your long-term vision for the next decade.
I think that college and career readiness are extremely important for our kids, but I also think there are other elements that are important for a child's success in life. I think that some of the issues which I brought up earlier around widening our curriculum, including those areas of art, music, library, language, and civics. I think that our social studies curriculum could include civics, economics, and that some of the things our children need to succeed in life are not found in our narrow curriculum of math, reading, writing, and science. I think those are extremely important core values and core curriculum, but I think that there is so much more in keeping our students engaged in school so that they will graduate and that they will have developed skills that take them far in their life beyond college and career. I supported the mill levy. That was 3A. I thought that it was extremely valuable and continue to believe that early childhood education and the tutoring programs in arts and music, which our mill levies have brought to our district in both this last one in 2012 and 2008, have been very important to our district. I did not vote for 3A. I was concerned about the accountability and the oversight of this bond. It was a situation where I felt the community needed to have a more informed decision-making process, and for that reason I did not support 3A.
I was a big proponent of the mill levy and the bond. I was the co-chair of the committee that put together the mill levy, and I was on the committee that put together the bond. We did an incredible job reaching out to the community, and we did an incredible job putting projects in there that benefit the entire community. Meg was the third largest contributor against the bond and against the mill levy, and while I was out campaigning for it, she was working with the people who were opposing it, trying to get it stopped. I think that's an issue. I wonder how you can run for the school board after having opposed all that additional funding that made such a big difference.
What I should disclose to you is that I donated about $200 to the 3A. So it was not a huge amount, and we were a very grassroots group that was trying to point out to the voters that they needed to be more informed.
I think what's important is to encourage schools to grow wherever they start, whether they start at 35% proficiency or 95% proficiency. I want the money to go to encourage them to increase by 5% or 10% or 20% over the course of years.
Meg, any response on this one?
Well, I think that some of the schools where you find the lowest achievement are some of the schools that need the most resources. And that doesn't include just bricks and mortar. It includes having qualified teachers and having teachers that are going to help our students achieve.
Amendment 66, the tax hike, $1 billion for schools, got through the legislature, the new School Finance Act. You supporting that this fall, yes or no?
Yes.
You?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that was easy.
I think that by bringing in options and choices and giving parents an opportunity to find schools that really work for their kids, we've made incredible progress in bringing people back to this district.
So I support alternative options for our children. However, I don't support the possibility of our neighborhood schools being starved as a result of it.
I want to make it clear that I'm a big proponent of neighborhood schools. My children have gone to 2 neighborhood schools and 2 magnet schools. I think neighborhood schools are fantastic. I think that some of the exciting things that we've been able to do around the city with some of the choice schools is to have some preferences in boundaries for kids who are struggling. I think that schools do better if they have a good mixture of kids of different socioeconomic level, of different racial backgrounds, different backgrounds of every kind. I'd like to see us as a school board sit down and have a serious question about how we can make DPS schools really diverse across the board.
One of the common themes that you've heard from me tonight is involving the community, and helping design what their school should look like and what we can do as a community to help strengthen our neighborhood schools.
What, I mean, how would you redeploy the funds, though? Does anybody have anything that jumps out at you? I mean, in terms of where are the resources right now misallocated?
I think they are. We've got 2,600 district staff supporting somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 teachers. I've worked in the private sector all my adult life, and I can tell you that ratio is, there's something wrong with that ratio.
But I think working with a budget means that you really deal with the numbers that are in front of you and not make them up to make a political point. There are 700 administrators in DPS out of a total of 15,000 employees.
So there are 2,600 district staff.
Most of the
700 of them are
most of the
administrators.
people who come in that number drive buses. They serve food. They're safety workers and security officers in schools. So if you want to cut that down, you have to tell us what you're going to cut. The people who feed the children, the ones who keep them safe, the ones who drive the buses. I just think it's important to be accurate about how you count this.
I think I've been very accurate. There are 2,600 district staff.
So while we figure out where to put priorities in a budget, if Amendment 66 does not pass, we're going to be making deep, deep cuts in things we all believe in, and not just making strategic cuts to reallocate toward priorities. So I think it's important to understand our full responsibility for the future of the district as well as right now.
I
You're shaking
can't,
your
I
head, Joan.
cannot get behind Amendment 66. Amendment 66 takes and raises the money and reallocates it to being put out by the state. And in the past, we've raised these monies, these mill levies and stuff, and we've done it with district supervision. And now we're going to take this and we're going to make it a state supervision. And the state is going to determine who is the neediest people and who needs what. And I'm like, that's just another level away from the neighborhood.
Since we're on Amendment 66, your thoughts on that?
So I do support it. I think it does make some important structural changes. I think early childhood education is very important.
I want to go backwards a little bit to the last election cycle
Sure.
and ask you each if you supported the most recent bond and mill levy for the district. Yes or no?
Yes, I have supported both of them.
Mike?
I supported the mill levy, and I opposed the bond because I had serious concerns about how the funds would be spent. So the mill levy I was proud to campaign for, and I'm very glad it passed. The bond, however, my concerns were that there were very vague categories of spending, and after it passed, my worst fears were realized.
So we can have our differences about bonds and mills. I personally think that you don't try and withhold $466 million in improvements in physical structure from our kids, especially in a tight budget time.
So I have deep concerns about how Montbello played out. I think it was pretty clear that decisions were made and then taken to the community to be sold. And I think that's the heart of the challenge we currently have with the school board is there are other interests involved for each of the members. And I think the challenge here is that we've got to have a board that works exclusively for the community, that has no other extraneous connections. And you know, in the case of Mrs. O'Brien, DPS has paid her organization over $250,000.
And as to Get Smart Schools, a little marketing for my nonprofit, if you don't mind. I think it's a mistake to think that every person who's on an elected board should have absolutely no real-world experience. I think it's wonderful we have parents like Mr. Kiley who work very hard on his own children's school. I've spent 25 years creating
Excuse me,
preschool for
I worked
kids,
on Skinner
Cap
before
for
my
K,
kids were
which
there.
is brand new standards for the whole education system. Ascent, which lets high school students also get an AA degree from community college at the same time they're going to high school. Health care for uninsured kids. So I am very proud of my track record.
Yeah,
And
so just so you know though, I worked on Skinner before my kids were even.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Sure, not a
we
problem.
do have to move on.
Do you regret supporting vouchers, hearing that it attracted these types of extreme schools trying to get public dollars? I'm sorry, I didn't really
No, I
hear.
totally oppose vouchers.
During my tenure there on the board, I had to help decide to close one of the charter schools, and that wasn't an easy thing when we talk about school closures. I think that there is a place for charter schools, but I think that there is an accountability piece that needs to be there. And I think the one thing that disturbs me most is that they don't have some of the resources that they need for special education and for other kinds of things, and so they kind of steer children away from them.
So, agreeing with Joan, it's how you do it. It's the implementation.
I think one of the more interesting things about being on the Denver District School Accountability Committee is that we had these charters come in and they were giving us applications, and we were looking at these applications and we were sitting there going, where is this going to be happening? Where is this going to be happening? And the administration had already decided where they were going to try and stuff these people. And that's not how you want to do something. You want to have community buy-in. You want to have, to start a charter, you really should be going to the community where you want to have it and have the people say, yes, I will support this.
Or heaven forbid it was the community's idea to begin with, every now and then.
What do you think of the Denver plan? Do you support it in its current form?
I don't. Now, too much of the Denver plan is really making the teacher, be in the limelight, and we're not considering all the other factors.
Is the Denver plan too focused on it? No, I don't believe so, but I do believe that focus on the teacher is appropriate. And like my opponent, I agree that teachers should receive all the necessary supports, but the instruction happens between that teacher and that child.
For instance, in this bond that was just recently passed, the bulk of all the funds went to Northeast Denver. Southwest and West Denver is second to the last in funding. And so I would have probably advocated for more of the bond money to come into our neighborhood schools.
But overall, did you support it?
I did, but at the same time, I did not support the process.
Rosemary, on the bond and the mill levy last year, did you support it?
I did. I supported the programs that the mill levy funded, like tutoring and early childhood education, and I supported building the buildings, constructing the buildings that would house those programs, like the Pascual Ladue Early Childhood Center in Southwest Denver. I think there's plenty in this most recent bond for Southwest and actually West Denver.
Quickly, Amendment 66 on the ballot in November. We know what it is. $950 million annually from an income tax hike to generate more money, fund full-day kindergarten statewide, more money in the classroom. Do you both support it?
I support it, yes.
I do. I signed the petition and I plan to vote for it. LEAP was developed with teachers. The district developed it in conjunction with teachers. I think it's a great tool. Again, it tells us what areas need to be addressed in performance.
On the LEAP program, there is so much emphasis put on the outcomes of a teacher, and it's really on the abilities of a child to take standardized tests. There are many people of any background who are very good at writing an essay but have a hard time with a standardized test.
When and why is a school closure the right thing to do?
Well, if a school is failing to educate the children in that building, one might say 1 year is too many. I'd say for any extended period of time, I think the board has to look at that.
I think the only time that you should close a school is when there's environmental contamination or there is danger to the students and the people who work in the building. So the charters have been good incubators, but they've also been given a lot of latitude. And the latitude that the charters have are not given to the regular schools. As a matter of fact, a teacher or a principal wants to be creative, innovative, they are penalized. And so we have got to stop stifling our educators. We're losing people to other districts.
I want to bring in Rosemary on this. On the topic of choice, she's talking, you know,
Yeah,
you heard what she said.
I did.
Charters, this sort of new model schools. What do you think? Does that, the kind of school it is, does that have a pretty big impact?
Well, I do think it does have an impact. It does allow that latitude, you know, and mostly it's being outside of the union contract.
Well, I think the goals of the candidates and the district goals are the right goals in terms of having every child succeed. The difference, I think, in part of the discussion is about how to get there. In fact, I think that's the critical difference. And Mr. Taylor is just talking about basically continuing on the same path that he's been on for the last 7 months and the board has been on for the last 8 or so years, where we have an increasing achievement gap. And that's it. Albert Einstein, I think, was the one who said, you know, if you continue to do the same thing and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity.
Let's make sure that the public understands this. Charter schools are public schools. Innovation schools are public schools. Magnet schools are public schools. So what we need to do is find those models that are successful and have those models duplicated throughout the whole district. And yes, we as a school district, we as a board have to intervene when kids are not being educated.
When we're talking about segregation, and we're seeing an increase in segregation because, in part, because of the choice process, and that's not a negative comment or a positive comment, it's just a reality.
Matter of having the facts. When you've lived in this district for 33 years, you have a lot of facts, you meet a lot of people, and you understand the stories that maybe Mr. Kilgore didn't have the opportunity to get since he's only been here a short time.
I've been in Denver since 2000. I've been in the same neighborhood since 2000. I've been in the neighborhood of Smiley, which you have not been in, and I don't have any questions about my facts. I'm not going to cherry pick small items out of what you say, and I would appreciate it if you didn't cherry pick small items out of what I say.
In mind, we're talking about the kids in the classroom, though, and what's best for them. And what's best for them is not forced placement. And forced placement was absolutely wrong any place in the district.
I think we agreed on that. And in terms of closing the achievement gap or eliminating the achievement gap, the things that I talked about earlier, I think, are the kinds of resources that we need to apply, and that'd be smaller class sizes, more tutoring opportunities, more mentoring opportunities.
Well, Roger may not know this, and maybe he does, but we have student-based budgeting now, where our schools get the money, they decide on how they're going to spend that money.
Do you both support the recent bond and mill levy?
That's correct.
You both supported
Yes.
both of them?
Yes.
And in November, you'll both vote yes on Amendment 66?
Yes, indeed.
That was easy.
So no, I don't think a charter school that the district doesn't necessarily want but needs to approve under state law should have equal access to district facilities.
Well, we finally found some agreement that the new schools in Montbello and Green Valley Ranch is bringing excitement to the community, and people are engaged and excited about that, and that's true.
I think the negatives or the concerns that I have is when you're talking about your principal or school leader making observations or peer reviewers, they need to be qualified to make those reviews. And there are training efforts going on to make sure that that is the case as well. And it needs to be done in a non-punitive environment so you can get the most honest information about what could be improved in your teaching style.
You agree with that? What do you think of the
I
changes?
agree with almost 100% of what he said, but let's keep in mind that this LEAP system was put together by the teachers union, teachers, and DPS staff. They've been working on it for quite some time. And the presentation that I was fortunate enough to be on the board when they gave this presentation, as all of them were sitting there and cheerleading the system, cheerleading this and saying, it's time to get to work. Let's get it implemented so that if we find areas where we need to tweak it, we're going to tweak it together. So teachers, teachers union, and DPS staff are all excited about this. So yes, co-location is good. You must have those memorandums of understanding between the two partners to make sure each agrees on how to operate within the confines of the building.
Westerly Creek and Odyssey are now in their own buildings, and we're trying to get out of their co-location as quickly as they could.
No, that's not true. Good partnership, and as Odyssey continued to grow, as you know, there's a waiting list for Odyssey. Maybe Roger doesn't know, there's a waiting list. They needed more space, and the district helped them find additional space, and they moved out of the school.
Thank you both.